Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID-19, as well as important news items that happen during COVID-19. Today is episode number 199. We've been on the air for 199 days since New York City shut down. It's almost hard to believe that that number is real because time has gone so slowly and so fast at the same time. We have taken a pandemic with its incredibly painful health and financial situations and a reckoning, an international reckoning around race, and injected into this a full-blown election season. And on top of that now, the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose life, legacy, and her impact on the law we will discuss today with two experts. Our guests are Shelley Quilty-Lake and Bryan Parker. Shelley is a partner at Menon and Associates, and Bryan's CEO of Legal Innovators. We'll talk to both of them in just a few minutes. Please tag and share this conversation with your friends and family around the world. They can watch now or later. We want as many people to see that as possible, and also to understand what are the legal implications and political implications of her passing. Hi, everyone. I'm Sree Sreenivasan. I am so honored to be with all of you today. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. Our motto: don't cancel your event without talking to us. Don't even plan your virtual event without talking to us. We've done events for 50 people and events for 100,000 people. So somewhere in between, we bet, is your event. We'd love to help you, and we'd also love to help you build a talk show like this for yourself or for your company. Here's our show. In our first 195 episodes, we've had more than 1 million viewers, 129 million social impressions, 347 guests, 202 of them women. 65 guest cities have been our guest locations from 17 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. We are live right now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on LinkedIn. And we hope all of you are sharing, as I know our guests are sharing as well. We are also on YouTube with our archives. Our entire archives can be found at SreeNet. We're able to do this because of our awesome sponsors, and we will tell you more about our sponsors a little later. But we're also able to do this because of our awesome producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon on Twitter. And they are both here with us, and they are the reason we have the show for 199 days. So please share right now, and please tell us about the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What are you thinking about as she was this week? She's lying in state, as a New York Times headline put it, in a city that is divided over her successor. She became the first woman to lie in state in America, in the Capitol building, which tells you something about how America treats women, and the first Jewish person to lie in state at the Capitol. So are you ready to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her incredible legacy? I know I am, and we are now going to bring on stage Bryan and Shelley. We're so grateful to both of them for being with us. So let's say hello to both of them. Hi, folks.
How are you? Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I know Shelley will join us in just a minute. And Bryan, my first question to you, as I ask everyone, is how are you doing? Where are you? And how's your family managing through the pandemic?
Well, thank you for asking, by the way. I just moved to, coming up on a year from California. So my family's all back in California. They're locked down and they're safe, fortunately. I am in DC, in the nation's capital. So I've gotten to take in both live and the aura of RGB and those honoring her. And, you know, at the same time, as you talked about, and I know we'll get into it, seeing an almost seamless descent into talking about her successor, which, I think has rubbed some people the wrong way. But I am here and I'm safe and ready for COVID to be over. But what can we do?
So thank you so much for being here. And we'll also talk a little bit about your career and your work as well. Let's say hi to Shelley Ann. How are you? Shelley Ann, can you, I know you're having a little trouble with the tech. Let's see if she can hear us. If she can't, we'll bring her right back in a minute. So let's get right to it. Bryan, tell us about what you're thinking about in terms of the justice. I posted as soon as she died, I hope Mitch McConnell and Trump don't try to nominate a successor before the elections, and they didn't even wait 2 hours
to
make it political. So please talk about that.
Yeah, and you got some of my comments in the intro. I think it was a disservice to her memory. We have her lying in state. Both Leader McConnell and the president did say good things about her, but I think it would have been a more fitting tribute for somebody who has been as big a giant as RGB was, for what she meant to this entire country, for what she meant to legions of women of all ages and in their lives, and what she represented as an American. I think as we come in especially Inter Monday, you mentioned her being Jewish, and Yom Kippur, the high holy days. I just think that there could have been some more deference to, let's honor this great American, and then let's get to the question of who's going to succeed her, without, I think, stepping on her memory in the messy way that it was done. And
this was sort of predictable, wasn't it? That they would, any chance they got, they would make it as complicated and as go right for the kill, if you will, in what they were looking for. Here, we're seeing a beautiful cartoon by Liza Donnelly, our friend and New Yorker cartoonist and CBS cartoonist, who she writes, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg lies in state in the Capitol, the first woman to be so honored and the first Jewish person. And there she is, just beautiful and poignant and sad to see this, but also I'm proud to see that America can honor her in this way.
100%. 100%. And as I said, I passed by the vigil. My co-founder of Legal Innovators, Jonathan Greenblatt, and his wife Linda waited in line 2 hours to be able to pay their respects earlier this week. And I got to say, this was maybe a more proud moment as just being an American. There were Democrats, as you might guess. But there were Republicans in line too, full with Trump hats, and it didn't devolve into being political. I guess my point is that people on both sides of the aisle were honoring her memory, which is the way that it should be. I think, given the procedure, given the time that it takes to get a justice through, considered all that goes into it, we could have just waited a little bit. But I do recognize, I don't live in the Stone Ages, that this world of social media, everything happens in an instant, right? And so, as you said, it's predictable. So we'll have to get into it and see, where does her legacy leave off? What kind of person should come behind her, and then what should be the procedure that you were alluding to? Meaning, given as close as we are to this presidential contest, do we wait till the other side and then whoever the winner is make the pick, which would be consistent with what happened in 2016 when we were further away? The Republicans obviously argue that now that they have the presidency and the Senate. So I don't want to front run the conversation too much. It was a beautiful moment to see Americans of all political stripes honoring the late justice this week.
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. And hi, Shelley Ann. Great to have you here. I hope you can hear me. We're just asking for your thoughts on on Justice Ginsburg. Go ahead, Shelley Ann. Can you hear me? Please go ahead.
It looks like she froze.
I'm not sure she can hear me. I'll just.
Hi, sorry for my technical difficulties.
No.
I can. I'm back.
That's great. So so just tell us your thoughts on Justice Ginsburg and her legacy, please.
Oh, so many. She was wee in stature. Yes, I can hear you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. No, I can hear you. I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead. We can hear you. Sorry about this.
Oh, sugar.
This is, and I love her saying, "Oh, sugar." This is great.
Yes.
Yeah. Please go ahead and
her legacy is she is wee in small in stature, but a giant in a whole host of ways. As an attorney, as a woman.
I'm so sorry that we're having these technical difficulties. I'm going to bring Bryan back on so we can talk about Justice Ginsburg. But first, I'm going to ask Bryan to tell us a little bit about his work in the legal field and to place his own work in the context of trying to understand the legal world of today. So, Bryan, go ahead.
Yeah, well, look, I'd like to think that we're a legal firm, and so what we do is recruit, train, and place with our partner law firms and big corporate legal departments, lawyers that we identify, junior lawyers, so that they get a chance to come into big law. We also have a diversity and inclusion initiative, which I think would have been very much in line with the late justice's, things that she pushed for. So we're 50-50 men and women. We are 50% diverse, and as we've come out this week with a white paper called "Restoring Lost Hope," and talking about driving systemic change. And I think if you look at the arc of the justice's career, this really was her story, right? Being at Harvard and called into the dinner with the dean and asked, "Why are you taking a place from a man?" And graduating at the top of her class from Columbia Law School and being passed over for a Supreme Court clerkship just on the basis that she was a woman. And then after doing a district court clerkship, coming out and finding that no big firm would offer her a job when they offered every man jobs. And of those kind of credentials. And as she went through her early career, really saying, look, we're going to make equal rights. And I love you guys are putting lots of great pictures up. And I hope you have the one. It's become a popular meme that talks about women should be in all the places where decisions are made. Right. And that's a truism for so many reasons. And that certainly is a creed at Legal Innovators. And we put out a piece, a short blog piece that I'm proud of this week on the Ruth Bader Ginsburg legacy. And it's on our website at legal-innovators.com and on LinkedIn. And I will say, and giving credit, I think, to two people. We have a young lawyer who is a big student of the Supreme Court that wrote that in part, and our director of operations, both wonderful women. Rose, Quam Wickham, and Megan Smith. And I think that's just obviously a little bit of the millions of tributes that are pouring out for the justice. But when you start talking about equal rights under the law and equal protection, that's something that she was talking about, right? And so this is just the next legacy of that, is that access to the law and whatever kind of legal jobs that you want. It should be a democratic process, right? As long as you are qualified, you should be able to go and do that. So we're trying to drive those values and stand up a company.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. Everyone, please check out legal-innovators.com and learn about their incredible work they're doing in the diversity field, because it'd be fair to say big law hasn't always been diverse or isn't been diverse enough. So we're working on that. Thank you. Let's see, Shelley Ann.
Yeah, and I would just, if I could, we have diverse and non-diverse lawyers, and we're about cost rationalization, training, and diversity is a part of what we do, but not all that we do.
Good. That's good. That's great to know. Shelley Ann, I'm sorry you're having technology troubles. If you hear me, please go ahead and finish your thoughts as you were trying to tell us about Justice Ginsburg. I'm really sorry. I think if you can, please go ahead. I'm seeing if she can see our private chat. If you can see that, please. I'm posting questions to her in the private chat, hoping she can see that. And I'm hoping my producers will tell her to read the private chat. I can ask her questions and she can reply. We'll make this work. It's a Friday night. It's not too complicated or too serious here. We are just trying to understand. And I one of the photos I showed Bryan was a picture of Justice Ginsburg being sworn in or nominated by Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
And what would be surprising to many people is that moment he was very proud of how centrist she was.
Right.
So
that's right.
What's changed in the last 3 decades? Is it America that's changed? Is it she that changed? Is it the court that changed, or all of the above?
Well, that is a great question. We debate that a lot between my co-founder and myself. I think I would say, as a general matter, when you look at Supreme Court justices, that's why, I kind of recoil at the notion when people say, "Well, that's a liberal justice and that's a conservative justice," right? Justices, in the words of John Roberts, right, and John was nominated by a Republican president. He says it's our job to call balls and strikes. We are not on one team or the other. We are stewards of the law. And certainly you have justices judged and then justices that grew up in whatever tradition or style that they had, right? Scalia was a Federalist and a strict constitutionalist. And if you look at RGB's jurisprudence, yes, maybe you could argue that she was a moderate, but I think you have to look at a person's whole life's work. She's not on there to be an activist, but if we don't look at what happened since she got out of law school and really got her chance because of the lack of opportunities with the big law firms, she got a chance pretty early on to study, as you know, Sweden's legal system. And there it was very egalitarian. And so if we look at her career from, sort of 72, leading the ACLU Women's Project, we see a trajectory of fighting on a personal theology of equal rights and equal protection under the law. So I don't know that she was there to try to be an activist. She certainly wasn't there to wear a Democrat or a Republican tag phrases, as none of them should be. But as justices settle in, if we are judging them by our political labels, I think we'll be surprised at where they came out. If you look at the sort of two decisions, right? Justice Roberts, who, if you look on the surface, and people will say, "Oh, well, he's conservative, he's Republican," and he was the tie-breaking vote on upholding the latest challenge to the Affordable Care Act. Well, he was reading that as a justice, and I explained his explanation before. Neil Gorsuch with the court's landmark decision in the LGBTQ recent case of or companion set of cases over the last 3 months. Well, he was reading the face of the law, which goes to being conservative, but that reading allowed to protect those LGBTQ rights, which I think from a human perspective are right. So I think we have to look at justices under the guise of the law and how they are interpreting it, and take our political elements off. And I don't want to get too basic, right? But our system is designed as checks and balances, and the judiciary is supposed to be a check on the executive and on the legislative branches. So if we can stop looking at them through political labels, I think it will serve us all well. Because if we descend too much into that, we start running the risk of living in some sort of banana republic, right? Which is, I think, unfortunately, a lot of what we hear on the news.
As you see on the front page of the New York Times website, Trump selects Amy Coney Barrett to fill Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court. Right. She's considered a home run by conservatives because of her very conservative background. She is staunch anti-abortion, activist or judge anyway, and also has been trying to help. She's written very extensively about Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, and its problems. But we're going to just bring Shelley Ann. We'll talk about the judge in a few minutes. Let's bring Shelley Ann on. Go ahead, Shelley Ann.
Yes.
Go ahead, Shelley Ann.
Hi, Sree. Thank you very much. And apologies for the difficulties we've been having this evening technically. Yes, I'm talking right now. I believe my mic should be working. Audio.
It is. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Okay, excellent. Finally. In terms of the legacy of RBG, I believe I heard Bryan touch upon this in terms of she ensured through the decisions she wrote, both majority and dissenting, that access to justice and access to opportunities was afforded to not just women, but people in all categories. And that is a very large legacy that looms and is obviously of concern with respect to who is now going to replace her. And will they ensure that what the judge now being proposed by President Trump appears to have an orientation that went against Justice Ginsburg's grain in terms of enhancing the protections that the law afforded protected categories of people.
Thank you. So what do you think is, when we'll talk about the nominee in a few minutes, but Shelley Ann, in terms of what she has done, not just, when people say, well, she was a liberal judge, but what she did changed the opportunity for women of all kinds, right? So that's part of the legacy, and that's why I'm so bothered by the way some people break this down into that she was just a liberal judge. And so let me ask Bryan this in terms of just so that people can understand her legacy, that the work she did with the ACLU. You remember that when then Senator Biden, chair of the Judiciary Committee, said to her that your place in history is already guaranteed because of the work you did. That's very unusual, right? Normally, the being the justice is the biggest, was what makes you famous. She was already famous.
That's right.
And
that's exactly right.
That everybody remembers. So talk about that a little bit, please.
Yeah, and I know that we're having some technical difficulties, unfortunately, and I think this bears repeating, because you talked about women of all stripes, and I thought I'd just share with your audience. I shared with just a few friends that I was going to be on because I wanted some interesting facts, some more obscure things that I could share, and I've got one at the end. I hope you'll let me share a little anecdote from one of her clerks, who's now the dean at NYU Law, which is where I went. But a woman who is a very good friend of mine in California wrote me, with some amount of pride, that in the 70s she remembers walking around with her mom, and the pride in her mom at being able to get a credit card herself without having to have a man sign on as well. Right. So you talk about legacies, and we tend to think of these lofty Supreme Court opinions. And obviously they filter down. We can think of marriage equality and a number of other things. But just as a practical everyday thing that you think, well, if somebody has good credit and they could pay the money back, they should have a credit card. If not, right, we make those kind of decisions. But as recently as 1970, this is the first time that you're able to see that. I think to pick up on your legacy, or your question about legacy. I guess I would break it into three components, right? And I think we have to. I think that we have to look at what she did in law school. I say we have Shelley coming back, what she did in the first part of her career, and then what she did as a justice. I know I've been talking a lot, and I'll zoom back in if you'd like, or I can continue. But if you'd like Shelley to pick up on where she was, given that we have audio, I'm happy to do that. So you're the host.
Yeah, no, thank you. And by the way, compliments on your tech. You have a very good microphone, I can tell, and the headphones.
Well, we shameless plug. We have a podcast we'll be launching next week called The Law in Black and White, and so we're going to talk about, if it's okay with you, we're going to talk about this recent spate of police-involved killings of Black Americans, and obviously we had a very significant event in Louisville this week, and so we're going to talk about the law on all sides of that, and maybe what some reforms that can happen. But it is thanks to that we have a good setup here. So I'm glad it's working.
You're ready. You're podcast ready. I'd love to have you back and talk about that once you're out promoting the podcast. So tell us where you find it. Is there a sign-up page for it yet, or what is the story?
Yeah, so we are literally. I hope our director of operations is listening, because she was giving me a hard time about this. I was up until 3 a.m. earlier this week, and I was up till 1 doing work. But then the last 2 hours, I was trying to select music for the podcast, and so we're fighting over that. It should be ready this week, and we're going to drop it. It'll be on Apple, in the App Store, Google. You'll be able to access it on our website that you already gave out, legal-innovators.com, and you'll see it under the little tag, The Law in Black and White. So thank you for being gracious and allowing us to talk about that, because I really do think one of the things that the country's arguing over right now is elevating, and I think Shelley was starting to talk about this, right, in lifting up women. And so if all women matter, then this Black woman in Louisville, Kentucky matters, and we have to lift up her life. And this is not a matter of, hey, let's bash the police. This is, let's look at this from a systemic perspective. I think as you talked about what RBG's legacy was, her legacy would have been equal protection. So equal protection under the law means that Brianna's life should have had more meaning, that Brianna should be here with us. And if we are to do anything that holds up her memory, and that gives a nod to what our BG did for us in equal protection, then we will look at the system and we won't have the next Breonna Taylor. So thank you for that side note. And let me get out of the way while Shelley has a good connection here.
Shelley, go ahead. We were asking about the impact of RBG and women in this country. I don't know if she can see. It sounds like she can't hear me. We're putting comments on the side, private chat to her, but we'll bring her back when she can be with us.
Don't worry, I've got enough content for us. I do, since we are talking though, and I want to, for anybody that's listening out there, I want you to say I'm raised by a single strong Black woman, and given that we're honoring a giant and a woman in our history, when Shelley does get her stuff fixed, I want to get out of the way and actually hear from a woman about a woman's legacy as well. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, but I think we've got to honor this space for thoughts on both sides here.
I completely agree, and whenever she comes back, we will have her on. I do want to just share some of the comments people are talking, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as we when I name where people are from. It'll be great to hear your thoughts on any of those towns. If you've been there, if it's on your bucket list, if you have any thoughts. Somebody on my show said, I don't want to call it a bucket list. I call it a life list. So let's start with the East Village in New York. Jonathan Burstein has watched 199 episodes in a row. So
wow. Jonathan, either this is the greatest thing on earth, or we need to get you some hobbies, buddy.
Both,
of course, I'm joking. This is a great show, but that's quite a record.
And your favorite memory of New York or the Village?
Well, look, that's really where I grew up and became an adult, right? I went to NYU, as I said, for law school, and I got a chance, great opportunity to start with a law firm there, Sherman and Sterling. I lived in the Village while I was going to law school, and great memories of playing intramural football down there on the East River, of going to some of the bars, and yes, sometimes we didn't study, and it was. It's a place of great diversity and of great character. I think what I remember, one of the things that I remember most is walking back to the dorms, and this was after Tupac had been shot. And there was a mural that was painted there, and you saw people of all races getting together and honoring him. So anyway, that not what we're here to talk about, but you asked about the East Village, and I think that's great. And I see Silver Spring there. I'm in DC in Northwest, so hello to you in Silver Spring.
And we have someone watching on LinkedIn. So hello, Alex. Martin's watching from Riverdale. Thank you for tonight's special show, Martin. A special person. There will never be a more brilliant justice than RBG. Charles and Mary are watching from New Jersey. Hello. And Charles is not just a viewer, he's also a sponsor of the show. His book, The Inventor in You, is right here. About another one of my our guests. These are all books of guests who've been on the show, including we have here Antonio Johnson's book. It's called You Next. It's about black barbershop culture. And it was a really fun conversation. We learned so much. We laughed. We talked about the pain in the Black community with the involved shootings, and I'm sure we'll talk some more. Stefan is watching from Ramsey, New Jersey. Says Sree, Shelley, and Bryan, what Trump, McConnell et al. Did by turning this into a political statement as soon as RBG passed away is beyond painful, downright revolting. Shame on them. History will judge all of them harshly for all they're doing to our country and his way of life. So you can see Stefan wears his emotions on his sleeve, as I do. Stefan, by the way, fantastic photographer who's got a podcast on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, and he talks about social media and photography. So 10 a.m. Eastern, everyone please come in and watch. It's called the Spin It Social Hour, and you can find him on Twitter at Spin It Social. Ashok Sharma's watching from India. Have you been?
I have not been to India. You said bucket list. That is absolutely on the bucket list. Of two of my best friends in the world have talked about the greatest memories there. One did Habitat for Humanity and went over and helped build houses. So I definitely hope to visit.
You mentioned Sherman and Sterling. They were famous for many, many things, of course, but they also, I believe, had the first South Asian head of a white shoe law firm about 10, 15 years ago.
That's right. I got a chance to work with him when I was at Sherman, and he's now the general counsel at Citibank.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
You're talking about Rohan, I assume.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cut through it was kind of a glass ceiling that he helped break. And we have someone watching on Twitter. I'm not putting them on, but we have a lot of trolls who are out to say bad things about Justice Ginsburg. They can't leave it alone. They have to, here's someone who's died. You have nothing good to say. That's fine. Keep it to yourself. But to come in here and just say bad things is just horrible. Michelle's watching from LA. So let's hear your LA memory.
Hi, Michelle. So LA, I have a lot of college friends there. And one of my first deal, in fact, at Sherman and Sterling was creating Sempra Energy Company, which was the merger of Pacific Gas and Electric and San Diego Gas and Electric. And I guess at that time, at about $5 billion, it was one of the largest mergers in history. And so I was a peon, of course. So I did lots of document review, but I was in many hotels around LA. And I think in terms of the trolls, I don't know if they can hear or if they care. One of the things, and you can probably, if you go through my social media, you'll see what side of the aisle that I'm on. But I don't think that this should be a political conversation because, again, I think justices are there to be a check and balance on the two political branches of our government. And I think we should leave it at that because Republican or Democrat, what Justice Ginsburg did in the ERA era was make it so that women were looked at equal protection under the laws, that they were seated on juries, that that benefits could be awarded equally. That this was obviously a Supreme Court case, but people remember the VMI decision, and that led to women being able to be to enter the Virginia Military Institute. And so, Republican or Democrat or independent, we owe it to, well, I mean, there were more justices. Obviously, she was writing the opinion for the court, and then hopefully this will bring us back to Amy Coney Barrett at some point. But I think we talk about Breonna Taylor, and we talk about lifting up women of all colors, no matter where they come from. And I think we have to look at Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstedt, 2016. And in that court, the court decision helped strike down, and I believe it was Texas. I'm just looking at shorthand notes that I made for myself. But I believe that the court decision there helped strike down restrictions on abortion. And this was important because they didn't want women returning to the unsafe practices of going to rogue practitioners to get this. And so when you're overly restrictive, or if it's in an area that's banned, what happens is that this becomes a crime of poverty. And whether it's Black or white or Latinx or whatever color or race you happen to be, these are the back alley abortions that we're talking about. This is when women get infected. This is when women die. And so this is a health issue. And so we can debate abortion another time. But I think both because of RGB's legacy, her dying wish, which was to have whoever was victorious appoint her, and then where she came from, the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to that is antithetical to everything that the court is supposed to be about, everything that RGB was about. We can look at the friendship that she forged with Scalia and say they had some epic heated battles, but they were true to the law, at least to their interpretation of it. Amy Coney Barrett has been on record with her faith out front. And I just think, obviously we have the freedom of religion in this country, but we also have separation of church and state. You start blending those, you start bringing those into your jurisprudence. I think we run a very, very dangerous risk of legislating or setting precedent that is going to try to legislate one person's morality over the other, and that just can't be, especially by somebody on the highest court of the land. We're going to have an epic battle, right? I mean, that's probably for another show to talk about how that's going to play out. But I'm not a fan, but I get that there will be some colleagues on the other side, some lawyers that I respect that will support it. And what I would say to them is, fine, if President Obama, 9 months away from the election, had to wait on his pick so that the American people should choose. It should not matter that you hold a majority in the Senate, because if the issue is for the American people to choose, we have two very clear and very different choices on the table. We are, I think, 52 or so days away from the election. Let's let the American people speak. Elections do have consequences, and then whatever side is victorious will put their nominee forward.
Thank you so much, Bryan. So interesting. I also have here your Twitter, so people have it. R. Bryan Parker.
I appreciate that.
Look at this, innovator, disruptor. And I missed that. This was not a description of you, but it could be. Friends of the Children. That's not his title. That's the name of the nonprofit he supports, Friends of the Children. He's also into sports, as you can see, and art should uplift, and community servant. We'll talk all about that in a bit. I just want to say my mother is watching from Kerala in India. So we say hi to Amma. Love you so much. Miss you very, very much. Let's see if we can bring back onto our stage here our friend Shelley Ann, who's been very patient as she's dealing with all kinds of tech. But you can hear me?
Yes, indeed I can. I hope you can hear me too.
Oh yeah, she's in a completely different place. Happy to have you back. Look,
I'm so glad to be back. Sorry about that, Bryan. But you see, I did channel my inner RBG by persisting. My RBG. This is the American history pop icon figure of her. I channeled her by persisting and overcoming obstacles.
Well, and you
that,
stayed much calmer than I would have, so kudos to you.
I was about to lose it. But with respect to RBG and her interpretation of the law and the large shoes that she's left to fill, she ensured access for all. With respect to women and with respect to all protected categories, she was so unique in that she got the realities of the workplace. I'm an employment lawyer. I represent victims of discrimination. And her decisions, whether she's dissenting or writing the majority, she really gets it. She gets it what it is to be a woman who's been discriminated against with respect to how she's paid. She gets it with respect to the nefarious nature in which discrimination, women are subjected to discrimination in the workplace by being harassed by a co-worker or a supervisor. She really got that. And she was also mindful, even when addressing, like in the Lilly Ledbetter case, and that was a case that was with respect to pay disparity, where Lilly Ledbetter had worked for Goodyear for 20 years. But over the course of her time working there, she came to learn that she was not being paid, she was being paid less than her male comparators. And in Justice Ginsburg's decision, in her dissent, and she used her dissent voice so powerfully, she said, you know, the court's interpretation is so narrow, because they were basically saying, Lilly Ledbetter, she can't file her claims are time barred, she's got no recourse. And Justice Ginsburg realized, wait a minute, it takes time before you even realize you've been discriminated against. And so she not only recognized the manner in which pay inequity really operates in the workplace, and she did so because Justice Ginsburg was herself a civil rights attorney, and she was herself, as a woman, discriminated against. I mean, in fact, the discrimination that she was subjected to when she came out of law school was, I think, to the benefit of the nation, because otherwise, I don't think it would have led to her being on the Supreme Court bench.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. We're looking at your social media here. We're looking at Shelley QL, and passionate advocate for justice in the areas of harassment and discrimination in the workplace. You are not alone. Menon_law and IABA-NY equality. Talk about what she did in terms of making it clear that these are not women who are asking for something they don't deserve. This is their rights they're asking for, right? To a lot of people who are against women's equal access to everything, they say, you're taking away, it's a zero-sum game, you're taking away my pay and helping these women. How do you address that?
Well, exactly. She had such a fidelity to the law. I mean, she was very much, but Title VII provides this. It's not zero sum. Her stance with respect to discrimination, all its forms, including in the workplace, was with respect to it harms all people. It's not an either or proposition. It's that there's these laws on the books, like Title VII, which is from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which has since been amended. So she was very much like, there's laws on the books that prohibit discrimination based on race, sex, national origin, and they should be applied fairly. And that's really how she ruled as a justice. She was very much like by the letter of the law. Now, when she found that her colleagues, like in the Lilly Ledbetter case, were not adhering to Title VII to ensure that victims of discrimination on the basis of pay could have access and their day in court, she signaled in her dissent, this has got to change. The court is making an error here and is going wayward and is deviating from what the protections of Title VII. So hello, Congress, The ball's in your court. You need to act on this and address it and make it clear to the court. This is what we mean when we refer to discrimination based on gender under Title VII. And Congress did enact legislation. They enacted the Lilly Ledbetter Act of 2009, which basically addressed the deficiencies of the court's decision and has made it easier for those who've been discriminated against with respect to their pay, and they're not being paid equally as compared to colleagues in the same position. They've made it easier for those victims of discrimination to be able to have their day in court, because really that's what Justice Ginsburg was very mindful of. She was mindful of what workplace realities were, and that those who had been victimized would have their day in court and seek redress.
One thing that I will say about Lilly Ledbetter's case is that even though she was in the minority and she wrote a minority opinion, Justice Ginsburg's kind of very strong message, almost anger about the situation, spurred the case to continue, and I mean, not as a legal case, but in Congress, and therefore led to the Ledbetter Act and so much more. So she showed the power of writing dissent and causing that to change, to make change in society. We'll bring Bryan back on in a minute, but I asked him the same question that I'm going to ask you. When she joined the court in '93, President Clinton said very proudly how centrist she was, and that, you know, she was considered to be a centrist. And then now, of course, when imagine if today's Ruth Bader Ginsburg were being nominated, you know, it would be a very close battle in the Senate, whereas that one was overwhelmingly, she was confirmed. So what has changed? Is it America that changed? Is it the Senate that changed? Is it the court that changed? Or did she change, in your opinion?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's America changed and she changed. I think at first when she came onto the court, she was a consensus builder. I also think that the dynamic amongst the justices then was different. Like when she got on the court, she was, although there was a conservative justice in terms of Sandra Day O'Connor on the bench, she had another woman there. So she wasn't like the only one. So I think there was a collegiality that she was seeking at first. I think also the court rendered, even at that time, some good decisions that with respect to discrimination, like the VMI case that she wrote herself. There was another case with respect to LGBT rights, Romer versus Evans, that was also decided in '96, and she was in the majority on that. So I think it was easier for her to build consensus at that time. And I think what fundamentally transpired was, one, her colleagues were falling at a lockstep over the course of time, like in terms of they had a very restrictive vision and interpretation of Title VII, so that it would limit the number of employees who could seek redress for discrimination. And I think that's what made her an outlier. But I also think that she realized the power of her voice as a dissenter. That her original orientation was, let's be collegial and respectful, and she probably had that when she was a judge on the US Court of Appeals for DC. And I think what she came to realize over the course of time, and as she got more comfortable with her seniority, in addition to the fact that her colleagues were not adhering and interpreting the law as she saw fit, that she found her voice and used it very, very effectively as a dissenter.
Let's bring Bryan back on into the conversation, and I'll point out that Justice Ginsburg was confirmed 96-3 in the Senate.
Okay. I thought it was 2. Yeah,
it's incredible, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
Justice Coney Barrett's going to be whatever it is, 52-48 or whatever, and that tells you something.
If she gets a vote. So let's be clear that this
okay,
is
you're being a little more optimistic. I consider this a done deal. It's only a matter of time, in my opinion. But fair enough. So what do you know about the tools that the Democrats have
Yeah.
between now and the election. If you can just walk us through it, Bryan, if you're comfortable talking about it.
No. I am, but I wanted to say that I couldn't agree with what Shelley said more. And if I could just underscore it really quickly, if you look at her early work and their two cases, the Weinberger case in 74 and the Califano court case in 76. And she was, of course, she was arguing these before the court. She was not a justice until much later. But she was, to Shelley's point, to me, this underlined the brilliance in her strategy because she went arguing for the man. So if you had to treat the man equally under the law, and if sex shouldn't matter, then the corollary must be true, that women have equal protection under the law. And as you guys both say, and I guess I have to weigh in because I think it was a proud moment all the way around, that her colleagues did get the Ledbetter case wrong, but it's decided. This was one of the few times, I think it happens more now as a show thing, that she read the entire dissent aloud to really underscore the importance of this. And she was not speaking to the other justices, of course, because she was in the dissent and the case was already decided. There was no chance to reverse that. She was speaking to the Congress, and she was saying, Congress, you must act if you hold this value as sacred and for Americans. And of course, in 2009, Lilly Ledbetter was in the Oval. President Obama signed the act into law. In terms of the tools. Look, I know that this is not a political show. I'll give you my, dime store version. If I can quote another powerful woman in our country, and I think she has acquitted herself quite well over the course of an entire career, but especially since 2016, holding her caucus together and then becoming the first woman Speaker of the House. And of course, I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi. And what Nancy has said, and she's playing her cards close to the vest, is appropriate. We are going to use every tool available to us. And part of me and the political strategist or person that follows this stuff is like, okay, great, do this. But the other part of me that says this isn't honoring our democracy. This kind of fighting should be beneath an appointment of somebody to the highest court in our land. And the fact that we are going to engage in this when we have such a presidential battle going on. Anyway, what are some of the tactics? I think she has talked about bringing impeachment hearings again against the president, against the speaker. We face a government shutdown. I'm not saying that she's going to use that as a tool there. There is, of course, going to be a PR campaign. There are armies of lawyers. If you follow Lawrence Tribe from Harvard, you can see what he has been tweeting and folks getting ready. And then I think there are potentially procedural things that have gone on. I mean, the filibuster is still there. Can you go on long enough to delay it? And then there is the if and this will be slightly political, but if what Biden says, as Robert Meacham writes, right, in searching for the soul, restoring the soul of America, is calling for us to find our better angels. And so we've had two Republican congresswomen who have been on record of saying that this appointment should be for the next president. If it's three, then the vice president will break the tie and the vote. If we can get to four, then this will be either forestalled or it will fail. So I think there is still a path of working on some senators around the edges. If they cannot get the nomination to the floor and get it voted on, and it goes beyond the election, and then they try to do it during let's just say that President Trump loses, and they try to get it done during the lame duck session between the loss and the inauguration of then President Biden. There's also a special election going on, and I'm blanking. Maybe one of you guys.
in Arizona.
Yeah, thank you. It was Arizona.
Mark Kelly is competing against Joni Ernst, and because it's a special election,
that's right. He would be seated.
He gets seated like November 10th rather than January, right?
That's right, and he's a long time till the election, kind of. He's ahead by 8 points, and so like those are some of the things. And for the people listening about the impeachment, what impact does that have? And just for anybody that doesn't sort of follow this stuff as much, the Congress and the Democrats have the majority in the House right now. They pull the articles of impeachment. They have the votes to do it. The Senate has to conduct a trial. If you are conducting a trial, how long, how many witnesses, those kinds of things can stretch out. And if you are occupied with a trial, can you simultaneously try to get a justice through? And if you look at the average times of justices, that would stretch beyond the election clearly. And even if you look at some of the fastest times, it is almost unfathomable, even if you had a consensus candidate, that you could get there. And I think, I've been pretty clear, but your listeners will decide for themselves. I think that Amy Coney Barrett is anything but a consensus candidate.
All right. Thank you. And there was a great lesson in trying to understand Washington, and you are right there in Washington, so that helps us understand. Shelley, if you would talk a little bit about, where you see first of all, have you had time to research anything about the nominee and anything?
I have not yet.
Okay.
But one thing I would like to touch upon, and it'll be of note to your viewers, is RBG occupies a very unique position. I mean, literally today, here she is lying in state because of the historical figure that she is and was to so many. And it's rare in the legal community, or not rare in the legal community, but it's rare that the public are so aware of the impact of the court system and of decisions that are issued, right? It's usually a rarefied society where it's attorneys who are, aware of decisions that are issued. But one thing, and I think it ties into RBG's legacy, and her strategic and legal brilliance, even while a justice, is the way she ensured she spoke to the public, that she made them aware of the power that the justices yield in how they interpret the law and the impact it has on the lives of millions of people, whether in the workplace, in schools, or society generally. And she, when Peter was touching upon, and it was forceful, the way she read the Lilly Ledbetter dissent, and she was reading it to Congress, but also she was reading it for the public so that they would know and they would understand. And I just wanted to bring to your viewership's attention a case, Vance versus Ball State University. It's a 2013 case. It's another employment discrimination, and this time involving a claim of hostile work environment on the basis of race. And she again is dissenting because her colleagues once again are narrowly interpreting Title VII, which is going to foreclose this aggrieved woman from having her day in court. And Justice Ginsburg, in her dissent, she goes through talking about workplace realities. Like I said, that's a theme that's constantly in her description because she knows that she lived it, and she understands that regular people know it and have lived it. And she goes through and gives specific illustrations of individuals who would have not had their day in court had the US Supreme Court decision that was then coming down in Vance been in effect when their cases were in effect. So she really relayed, like, this is how it's affecting someone who works as an elevator mechanic helper, a female who was discriminated against. She wouldn't have had her day in court. And I thought, like, that is just a brilliant way of ensuring that the public understands, oh, it's not this technical thing with respect to whether a supervisor or coworker discriminates against you. It's these real people who were treated adversely at work won't have their day at court. And maybe I won't have my day in court if I find myself in the same position. So when she had that call to action to Congress, which she also has in this decision, I think it had so much more resonance because she's also saying, you, the people, need to be aware of what is going on here and what the impact of our decisions are on you.
So eloquently put. I mean, this is like a master class to have two lawyers here who are explaining in great detail. Fernando says we should all be so mindful that we should do unto others as we would want to be done unto us. The golden rule. I wish people followed that. I understand that it's not just my mother who's watching. I understand that Brian's mom is watching. You want to give her a shout out, please?
She is watching out in, so we're a mixed household. Mom is, I think she's still a Democrat, but you can check with her. They're in Laguna Beach. And her husband, Lee, is there, and he's a Republican. And the rest of our family, my uncle Ed and his wife Renee, are watching in Stockton. So thank you for all in California.
And here is Auntie Tem says, great explanation by Bryan regarding Supreme Court nomination process. Fernando says Republicans will see that their actions will come back to haunt them. And that's what some people are counting on to to delay things. Rachel says, thank you. And thank you, RBG. Linda's telling my mom that Sree does really miss you. She talks about me missing my parents all the time and all the way in India. Pradnya says it's shocking that even today, Black women have a significantly higher maternal mortality rate than their white counterparts. But that's a very sad statistic. But so many. One of the things that I heard today on a show that we put together with the Brennan Center for Justice is that Black men who are incarcerated, of course, are discriminated against when they come out more than white men who are also been in prison. But how about this? That Black men who have not been to prison have less upward mobility than white men who have been to prison. Just think about that and what that says about this country. It is. I was so upset to hear that. I was working, I was doing the production on the show with my colleagues, and it almost brought me to a stop because it was so stunning to hear that and so upsetting. And of course, everything we hear about the discrimination against women, Shelley, is doubly so for Black women, Hispanic women, right? So in your practice, how do you manage that, Shelley, in terms of bringing cases, and what are the patterns you're seeing?
Right. I mean, what I'm seeing presently is quite the spate of pregnancy discrimination claims, actually, which is sad to say, but it is so, women are so mistreated, even though there's good laws in the books that prohibit it. There's good laws on the books that prohibit all sorts of discrimination, but still it's prolific. So when we have clients, it's a matter, and they say are cross-sectional in that you've a woman who's Black, who's been discriminated against. It's really going through the weeds and teasing out, are they being treated the way are they being discriminated against on the basis of solely race or solely gender or both? And it can often be so, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like what we'll tend to do is like plead the two and the alternative. When it looks like, because these cases require, and that was another thing about Justice Ginsburg and why she was so diligent and fastidious with respect to her decisions. She understood that this context matters. Facts matter, and you really got to look at the specific context that and facts that are at issue in order to be able to determine, is this actionable discrimination or not? But she was somebody who got into the weeds, because things can rise or fall on a dime, as we say at the office. Yes. In terms of, it can be a detail that may seem insignificant, but that's going to be the one that's going to, that the court oftentimes is going to interpret as, oh, that proves your claim.
So one of the things that I'd like both of you to tell us, there are obviously folks watching of different backgrounds and experiences, and also young people who watch the show. What is your advice about going into the law as a profession? And tell us your story. How did you decide to go into the law? We'll start with Shelley?
For me, what I was actually working as a paralegal at a big law firm, and that's not what made me want to go into the law per se. I didn't want to do corporate law, but I got to do pro bono work with the Legal Aid Society, with foster care children that were aging out. That planted the seed. I was wanting to do something of service and something that would help. And I saw, oh, the law can be used as a tool to assist those who are voiceless, to assist those who need access to the law most of all. And that prompted me then to apply. And I was lucky, I got to go to the City University of New York School of Law, CUNY, which is a public interest law school. And as soon as I got in the door, I was like relieved. So my advice to young people is, I mean, I was motivated and I found fulfillment being an employment lawyer in keeping up with that public interest orientation and wanting to advance the rights of others and to help those who've been victimized.
Thank you.
So I'd encourage folks to go into the law for that reason, although there's those who go into it for others. I think if you go into it motivated solely for money, it's you're not going to last long in either law school or the profession.
And I want to hear Bryan's story as well. Also to point out that in the last recession, one of the stories about legal education, Bryan, was how law schools, some of the top tier ones are shutting down.
Terrifying to think what this country could be facing in November until
that's Ali Velshi's voice from MSNBC that's come through. A salute to Ali Velshi, though. You remember he's the journalist, the terrific MSNBC journalist who was hit by a rubber bullet, and President Trump made fun of him and of that happening at his rallies. I mean, this is the President of the United States making fun of a journalist in his very, in his work, doing it peacefully, being hit by the police and making fun of him. Outrageous. But so sorry, Bryan, I was saying that law schools, not the top tier ones, that they were in danger of being closed down and things like that. So if you remember that and have anything to shed on where we are with law schools today, that would be also helpful for us tonight.
Great. And give me some guidance. I've got, with your permission, of course, I've got one fun story I want to share on RGB. Should I save that? Will we have a couple more minutes?
Yeah,
or should I?
We can save that. Let's finish this thought and we'll go there. Sure. Thank you. And by the way, look at this. It's only in the pandemic at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. Here we are.
Well, we're lawyers. What do we have to do?
Yeah,
I mean, like
exactly.
this is my hobby, right? I'm listening to 538 and all kinds of political statistics, and right. I need a life too. I was trying to advise that other guy, but so
Bryan, it's an early night for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I agree with Shelley. I would love to say one quick thing, and that's on politics. And I think it's got to be a caution on both sides, right? Because life is long, and it eventually will come back around. And so I am a Democrat, and we are up in arms right now, which we should be. But we can remember back to, and again, there were lots of really bad issues, speaking of women, that had surfaced on Clarence Thomas, and we had to, have those aired out. But the Democrats have gone after Republicans in some pretty nasty political ways too, right? So when it's the other party's turn and you're in power, so if we're going to say and respect our Constitution and the checks and balances that should be there, the Supreme Court is got to be a little bit more sacrosanct than it is. In terms of your other question of the lawyer piece, I guess I have two answers to that. There was a guy, Reggie Lewis, you probably remembered. There was a book called The White Guys Have All the Fun, right? And he was the first to do this, lead this big leverage buyout of RJR Nabisco back in the 80s. And I said, wow, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an investment banker doing that kind of stuff. So that was one piece. But the other piece, and I think that the piece that spoke to me and led me to NYU, and NYU's motto for the law school is a private university and public service, was, again, a tradition that comes out of my mom, who I saw raise my sister and I as a single parent. But before that, I knew of her strength during the civil rights movement, and her strength in deep rural South Georgia, integrating, being the first in her high school to integrate that school in East Rome, Georgia, and all of the stuff that she has to, had to deal with. And so the question that I had is, who is speaking up for all those people? We hear, of course, the names at the top of the list, and they should be, right? The late congressman here that we just lost, Lewis, Malcolm, and Martin, and everybody else. But there were countless many that rode those buses, and the Freedom Riders, and people, and the rabbis, and Jewish community, and other whites that stood with us. I wanted to look and say, in this country, what they're more of than any other race is poor people. And how do you elevate, and how do you give rights? How do you give voice to those folks? And so I knew that was what the law was about. And you talked about Friends of the Children on my Twitter. I'm proud to be on the national board of that. And what the mission of Friends of the Children is to fundamentally change the arc of disadvantaged students and eradicate the cycle of poverty. And there's a Harvard study that shows for every $1 that we would spend on one of the kids, it comes out to $26 an outcome. Graduations from college, changes in income, bypassing the prison system, et cetera, et cetera. Finishing on your last point of law school, what I would say is, I think that, and this will change with there being fewer law schools around, and maybe that's an okay thing, because Shelley was kind of hinting at this when she talked. I think you've got to be really passionate about this. I think you've got to have it in your heart, and I think that you've got to. This has to be your calling. I think that there were too many people that came into the profession just because after college they didn't know what to do. So I think if it's an authentic calling and you're passionate about it, you will find a way to get to a law school, and no matter where that law school is, if it's in the top 25 or outside, you'll have a way to live out your mission. And so clearly, we need advocates. And one of the items that they discuss with the bar, you can't take the bar in person because of COVID. Do you have attorney diploma privileges? Are people taking it online? There is a great need that's being unmet right now on the pro bono side. So states are doing all kinds of things to get those people served. So I believe in democratizing the law. As I said at the top, one of the mottos of Legal Innovators, which I lead, is to do that democratization. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have fewer law schools, because the people that want to get into the law and really have a passion for that are going to find their way. And by the way, many of those law schools that are closing are unaccredited. So when you graduate from an unaccredited law school, it is often hard to take the bar, or even if you're able to sit for the bar, to be sworn in for as an attorney because of the different rules and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's great to understand that, and a relief, because obviously we need lawyers, and law schools have to be there. Before we let you go, I want to give each of you a chance to give us a couple of final thoughts. So let's start with Shelley. And thank you, Shelley, for being here. Thank you for being so patient through all the technology. And I loved what you said, that you persisted, and I'm sure RBG will be proud of you.
I don't know how she did what she did. But yes. And thank you, and thanks to the viewers, and thanks to Bryan for your patience with respect to the technical difficulties I was having. It was extremely frustrating because there was so much that I had wanted to say and talk about with respect to RBG and her legacy. What I'll conclude with is thanking her. In that, were it not for what Justice Ginsburg did, both as Bryan touched upon as an attorney, in moving the ball for women's rights, and then what she did as a justice, as a judge and as a justice, in making sure that the protections under the law to prohibit discrimination were enhanced so that all could have equal access to the law and all could get equal redress under the law. I think she was motivated by seeing that the Constitution and this nation was seeking to become a more perfect union, and she wanted to, and she played a very, very significant part in seeking to ensure that the United States move towards a more perfect union, but also understanding that it needs to be a constant endeavor. So I'm very grateful to all that she's done for us, for myself as a woman. I wouldn't be in a law firm with two other female partners, Colleen Menon and Lisette Ferreira, who I'll give a shout out to, representing who we represent, were it not for what Justice Ginsburg did. Thank you, Justice Ginsburg.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Tell us how people can find you and where they can find you and your website and all that good stuff. Of course, LinkedIn. I know you're on LinkedIn and on Twitter, Shell QL. Right?
That's right, Shell QL. That's the handle. You can also find out more about our firm at our website, which is Menon, MEENANESQS.com. We've got blogs on workers' rights. We've got blogs on guardianship. We also have an elder law practice. You can find out more about my partners, Colleen and Lisette as well, and my colleagues, Gayatri and Alana. Yes,
well, look at this. I love seeing all these women, and then you've got a token man in there.
That's hey, you know, we got to get that meme up. Women belong in all the places that decisions are being made. So bravo to you guys.
Yeah, really.
Bravo.
It is a rarity in the legal profession to have that many at a firm. Yes.
That is beautiful.
I think Justice Ginsburg would be happy.
Yeah, she would. She would. Her great line, right? She was asked, "When will she think there are enough women on the Supreme Court?" When there are 9. Right?
I love that. And she also touched upon, was it when she was appointed? She said, "I look forward to the day when I have more sisters with me and of different complexions."
Mm.
Wow. And she got to see that. She got to see that in being there. And yeah,
well, and we can't forget Justice Kagan as well. It's still a sister, right? Nonetheless,
yeah,
right.
And a New York sister, no less.
We got it right. Rep New York.
Sorry, Bryan, in DC. That's all.
No, hey, look,
New York, so it's okay. He gets his NYU credentials.
In New York, as a story that I'm going to share. You know, first I'll say. It was a pleasure to be in this podcast with you, Shelley, and Sree. Thank you for having me on. It's funny. I wrote down a few words that I wanted to say about Justice Ginsburg and Shelley. All of you can't see this, but you know her tech wasn't working, and she stayed unflappable. The strongest word she used was sugar. I can assure you that I would have used far more 4-letter words. This was grace. I think Shelley showed us this tonight, but this to me, as I thought through Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life, was about grace and all that she did. She believed in dissent, as Shelley and I went through, but she said that there's no need to be nasty about it. You can still make your points. You can still fight, but you can do it in the right way, as she said. Lastly, I want to end and share a story about her humanity. And I think people know if they watch NPR of her friendship over 5 decades with Nina Totenberg and how she was there first when Nina was sick, and then Nina was there when she was sick at the end. There's sometimes stories that we don't see. And I was talking to our Associate Dean of Placement tonight, and she used this phrase, light in the darkness. And I was having a talk with my mom last night. You know, it's just all of being shut in on COVID and the stresses and all that. And, you know, I thought back to a verse from the book of Psalms, which says, you know, there may be darkness at night, or there may be sorrow at night, but there'll be joy in the morning. And I think that Ruth was that bit of joy in the morning for all of us. She was that light in the darkness. There was a 2015 graduate of NYU Law School, Kelly Crosby, and she went on to work at a big New York law firm named Duane Morris. And the managing partner there, Michael Groman, was excited about what she could bring and what she would ultimately do. Kelly, not yet even admitted to the bar, came down with cancer, and then it became clear that she wasn't going to make it. Michael called over to the law school and said, "Is there anybody with a connection to RGB? Kelly would love to hear a phone call or get a note from her." And our associate dean of placement, who's Irene Jorsback, said, "Well, of course, our dean Trevor Morrison was one of RGB's many clerks." And he says, "Look, I'm going to have lunch with her. This is 2015 now. She's already in kind of failing health. I'll see what we can do." He came back and he had a note with him that he went and he delivered to Kelly's hospital room. Kelly read that and was as elated as you might imagine, getting a personal note from this person of such incredible high praise. Kelly passed away the next day. What I didn't say is that in her third 3L year, in the spring review, Kelly had written a rap. I'm going to post this in Twitter after we get off. Obviously, RGB came to some fame as the notorious RGB. And Kelly and a fellow classmate from NYU made a rap using legal words to Biggie Smalls' famous song by the same name. So RGB penned this note to Kelly Crosby, thinking of my favorite rapper with appreciation and affection. Cheers, RGB. This was an act of enormous proportions, even though this woman had only one more day to live. And so I guess I would leave that as our closing note, that there is humanity in everything that this woman does. And we know that we are given grace for free by our Maker, depending on what your beliefs are. And so I think as we go forward, especially into this very contentious season, how can we show and how can we give grace to others in the way that Shelley showed us tonight as she was working through her troubles? So I say rest in peace to this gentle giant. Thank you for your jurisprudence, and thank you more than anything for your humanity.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said, Bryan.
Beautifully put. We wanted to also show your website. There it is. And how can you be more innovative in the law? Is the website legal-innovators.com. And by the way, Melinda's put in a link to your website, Shelley Ann. And so everybody's here making sure everyone gets enough attention here. And Fernando, wonderful show. Great honor for RBG. We hope you're if that's even slightly true, we're very proud. Stefan says, Bryan and Shelley, thank you both for all this incredibly valuable insight. You're both amazing, and RBG would be proud of two such great attorneys. So that is awesome. And everyone, don't forget to catch the show tomorrow morning. That Stefan will be hosting at 10 a.m. Eastern. And at 9 a.m. Eastern, I want to tell everyone, is our 200th episode. And we are having a special guest from the WHO, the head of non-communicable diseases, meaning chronic diseases and their intersection with COVID-19. And just for our two friends and everyone watching, gives you a sense of how big and seriously people take their health. Bente Mikkelsen will be with us. She was a former CEO of a Norwegian health authority, not the Norwegian health authority. It has 70,000 employees and an $8 billion budget, which gives you a sense of how big, and even when they say socialized medicine and all of that taking care of people is so important. And that's at 9 a.m. Eastern, which will be right before Stefan's show. So please join us for that. I'm going to let both of you go and get your evening back. Thank you very much to both of you. Thank you for your time. Please follow Shelley Ann. She's Shell QL. I love that. It's a almost rhyming one. And please follow our Bryan Parker, who will be posting that rap that the lady wrote in that story, the beautiful story that he told us. Thank you very much, both of you, and we wish you the very best. And please come back and enlighten us some more anytime you wish.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Bryan, for cutting across it. It's
No,
going to be
no,
a
no.
lot. Yeah.
Thank you. And now I'm going to do something that I was asked to do by the great Kimberly Crenshaw, the Columbia Law School professor, who I asked, what can we do to be allies of Black folks? And she said very simply, say their names. And so I'm going to do that now. And then we'll thank our sponsors, and then we'll be done with the show. We use this stunning painting by Titus Kaffir in Time Magazine. You see the names on the border. We'll say those names. And on the right, you see a photograph of a young Larcinia Floyd with George Floyd. And you are seeing this photo. It's an undated photo. She would die 2 years to the day almost that he would be killed in Minneapolis, killed on camera. They're now buried together in Houston. And now I will say their names. Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jerame Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, Samuel Dubose, Janet Wilson, Kaylin Rockmore, Alton Sterling, Philando Castillo, Joseph Mann, Terrence Crutcher, Chad Robertson, Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stefan Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. That's not a list of everyone. That's not even a list of everyone after George Floyd was killed. But it is an important list, and we try to read that every single night. Just as Kimberly Crenshaw asked us to say their names, we're doing just that. Thank you for your support, and thank you for joining me as I read those names. Now we want to thank our sponsors for making this all possible, and we want to start by thanking our friends at Nunbelievable. Divinely delicious cookies on a mission. Each handcrafted cookie provides a meal to those in need. One cookie equals one meal. 20% off with the code SREE, S-R-E-E. Also grateful to The Inventor in You, a step-by-step guide to your first invention by Charles Cunnincarroll, developer of more than 80 patents, at Inventor Charles and guidetoinvention.com. And we're also grateful to our friends at She's on Call. They have a fantastic show coming on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Please join us. Dr. Camille Claire and Lillian Abo will be with us. One is an OBGYN and an infectious diseases doctor, and the two hosts of the show, Dr. Sujana Kurian and Dr. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian. Many thanks to them. And Sundays are busy around here. We also have the New York Times Read Along, where we read the New York Times out loud on Sunday mornings. And our guest is Lori White, president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, Rhode Island's largest private sector business advocacy and economic development organization, a former journalist herself. And she'll be with us reading the New York Times out loud. It'll be 5 years this October that we've been reading the New York Times out loud on Sunday mornings. And thank you all who have been there supporting us every step of the way. We're so grateful to you. And a reminder that you can always know what we're up to by subscribing on YouTube to our YouTube channel, or you can get a gentle alert on WhatsApp. If you just hold up your phone, you get a gentle alert when we are live. Hope that helps. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye, and thank you so much. We're so grateful.